Part 117. The Koi Fairy Wife is Sweet as Honey, Love from the Koi Goddess. Author, Su Xiaozhezhi. Chapter 1163. The tall and thin white guy asked me nervously where my Asian friend who came with me was. As soon as I heard it, I knew it was probably Jin Li. After asking a few questions, I became even more sure. Sure enough, racial aesthetic differences only exist among ordinary people. A beauty like the little fairy would be attacked indiscriminately no matter what race she is. I told him with a smile, she is married, and the most handsome man in our team is her husband. The white guy left with a lonely and sad look on his face. Haha, I couldn't help but sneer at him in my heart. Don't tell me Jin Li is married. Even if she's not, you don't have the slightest chance, okay? Even if the cabbage-like little fairy is destined to be humiliated by a pig, she must find the most beautiful pig. Ahem, I swear, I don't mean any disrespect to Mr. Liu. I just received a WeChat message. Jin Li and the others are back, and they seem to have bought some delicious food. Let's stop here. Hopefully there will be an aurora tonight. Number 25. I'm on the plane back now. The cabin was quiet as everyone else was catching up on their sleep. We barely slept last night and got up very early this morning to catch the flight. Everyone is tired. I'm tired too, but I can't sleep. When we return to the flower country, the show will be over. I'm going to face a lot of headaches. This realization kept me awake. I looked out the window at the clouds so close to me and remembered the feeling of sitting on a paraglider. Every breath is free and comfortable. Alas, let's not mention these troublesome things. On the last day, let's talk about something happy. We actually saw the aurora last night. Everyone was a little nervous during dinner, but Jin Li looked at us and smiled, telling us not to worry. She is always very confident and magnanimous, telling us that there will definitely be an aurora tonight. Although I know in my heart that no one can predict this kind of thing 100%, I can't help but believe it. In the evening, we put on warm clothes, brought hot water and food, and drove to the best place nearby for watching the aurora. We're not alone here. There are many other tour groups. Everyone stood together in different places, someone was looking at us, and our photographer was carrying photography equipment. But there are also many tourists with professional equipment, and we are not very conspicuous. We waited outside for more than an hour and then returned to the car. Everyone chatted in the spacious car. Lu Qingyuan seemed a little less interested in the evening. He frowned and kept looking out the window. Will there be an aurora tonight? He was a little strange today, he didn't seem like such an impatient person. But today, from dinner to now, I have heard him ask the same question several times. Even I am not so out of control. The others were probably tired of being asked and didn't want to answer. Only Su Hexiang glanced at him and said nothing. I sighed and added, I don't know, I hope there is. Jin Li, who was playing on his mobile phone, raised his head and glanced at us, then lowered his head and continued playing the game. After a while, probably when the game was over, she breathed a sigh of relief and said very calmly, What are you worried about? There will definitely be an aurora tonight, and the fairies have come to see it. I just want to laugh when I listen to her talk. How could there be such a narcissistic and cute person? It was as if aurora would appear specially for her. But before I could speak, the crowd outside started to commotion. I felt something in my heart and quickly raised my head. Through the car window. The splendid brilliance from the nine heavens pours down, the brilliance is endless. Momo's diary ends here. See you tomorrow. The Koi Fairy Wife is Sweet as Honey, Love from the Koi Goddess. Author, Su Xiaozhezhi. Chapter 1164. Jin Li's attention was distracted by the cheers outside. Others reacted faster than her and looked out the window. Lu Qingyuan had already reached out and opened the car door. But Jinli also knew what happened earlier than anyone else. The aurora appeared. A minute later, everyone in the car got out. He raised his head and looked at the green strip of light on the horizon that stretched between heaven and earth. The coming night is noisy because of this gift from nature. Many people were talking and taking photos, and there were also many couples who came here specially to hug and kiss under the magnificent scene. Jinli tilted his head and looked at it for a while. This grand scene in the human world is not a particularly rare sight for her. It's not the first time she's seen it either. At that time, before returning to heaven, she thought that she would never come back to this world again. Together with Lugenja, she visited all the places worth seeing in this world. Therefore, at this moment, what infected her even more was the unreserved joy of the people around her. In the darkness, she quietly held Lugenja's hand. The other party and her had been connected for a long time. Lugenja didn't say anything. He just used a little force to wrap the palm that was slightly smaller than his own in his own. "Have you noticed it too, Lugenja?" she asked softly. Lugenja nodded, "Yes." Jinli smiled slightly. Dad Tiandao's anger has subsided. Just now, the moment the aurora appeared, they both clearly felt that the slight suppression of the two people in this space finally disappeared. This also means that they can go back. On the way back, everyone was in high spirits, probably because they finally saw the aurora. However, Jinli glanced around and found that everyone was in high spirits for different reasons. She looked around at several people, focusing on Lu Qingyuan and Su Hexiang, and smiled slightly. "That's great," she sighed softly. Su Hexiang looked at her and asked, "What's so good?" Jinli smiled happily, "Everything is fine, I'm very happy." Su Hexiang didn't understand what her meaningless words meant and looked at her several times in confusion. However, Jinli didn't seem to want to elaborate, so she didn't ask again. Returning to the flower country, because the recording was completely over and the farewell banquet had been eaten in advance, everyone said goodbye directly at the airport. Jinli and Lugenja also returned to their house. "In a blink of an eye, we have been here for several years," Jinli said with emotion. Lugenja nodded, "Yes. It's strange to say," Jinli murmured to himself, "when I was in the heaven, I felt that a day, a month, a year, or 10 years happened in the blink of an eye. But in this world, a few years, actually it feels very long. It seems that I have experienced a lot of things, met a lot of people, and made a lot of memories. Probably because human lifespan is too short, so except for sleeping, most of the time is spent quite adequately," Lugenja said. "The vast majority of human beings have to work. In addition to working, in just a few decades, they also have to travel, develop interests, cultivate talents, visit many places, get married, have children, and raise children, in order to work harder." "I'm so tired," Jinli said. "In the heavenly world, a few decades may be just a time to sleep and be in a daze." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Koi Fairy Wife is sweet as honey, love from the Koi Goddess. Author, Su Xiao Zheji. Chapter 1165. Jinli and Lugenja had a tacit understanding, and neither of them mentioned the matter of returning to heaven soon. They seemed to not know about this at all, living peacefully in their own houses and living their own little lives. Travel with Me began to be broadcast simultaneously on Yunduo video and TV stations. Unsurprisingly, the ratings and word-of-mouth success were quite successful. There are rumors on the internet that the number of tourists in the places visited by the guests on the show has increased dramatically. The 6 guests also took advantage of this and became popular. But the guest this time is a bit strange. Logically speaking, this kind of popularity is followed by various business endorsements and frequent appearances in front of the public. But unfortunately, these are not this routine at all. Jinli and Lu Zhenju received many notices, but they rejected them all. Of course, it goes without saying that Long Hao disappeared from the public as soon as the show ended. Really no one can find him. Lu Qingyuan and Su Hexiang have received several interviews and participated in several activities. They are all carefully selected. The media will say everything they should say, and will not ask a single word they should not ask. Mo is the strangest. This music star, who has always attracted much attention, also disappeared after the show ended. The reason given by the agency was, Mo fell in love with traveling during this show and took another 2-month vacation. He wanted to have a truly relaxing and comfortable trip without cameras. This is a very strange and unwise behavior. According to the company's arrangement, I want to take advantage of the popularity of the show to quickly handle more business affairs for Mo, or a popular variety show. Otherwise, just release an album while it's hot. However, Mo, who has always been easy to talk to, unexpectedly persisted this time. The company was reluctant to blame this cash cow, so it could only agree in a sullen tone. Everyone thought this was just an ordinary trip. Who knew, something would happen. Something happened to Mo. In Aloha City in the northwest, she encountered a fire, rushed into someone's house, and rescued a little girl trapped inside. The little girl was fine, but Mo was burned by the fire and injured his arm and choked his throat. She was rushed to the hospital and received a diagnosis that her throat was damaged by smoke and her arms were burned and required skin grafting. The company transferred her to the best hospital in the imperial capital overnight and had another consultation, but there was still no solution. Mo's voice was ruined. She could no longer sing. The company's top management was so heartbroken that they couldn't breathe. They were not heartbroken for Mo, but they were angry that they were about to lose a pillar that made money. Everyone was comforting Mo and urging her not to be sad. They all felt that for a singer, this must be the most unacceptable and huge blow. No one knew that Mo was relieved. This accident was not planned by her, but a real accident. Her trip was an excuse to escape reality, and she stayed for a few days while passing through the city. This little girl is the daughter of the owner of the B/U0026B where she lives. She is well behaved and obedient. She even bought sweets for her sister, who is always looking unhappy. She ran out when the fire broke out. Then I heard crying from the second floor, but a child of 5 or 6 years old was completely frightened when encountering such a situation. She hesitated, gritted her teeth, and ran in again. When she came to the conclusion, she endured the burning pain in her arm and showed a relieved smile. Jinli was right. She thinks, if you do good deeds, fate will always reward you. The title is not a joke. It is true. The countdown is over. The koi fairy wife is sweet as honey, love from the koi goddess. Author, Su Xiao Zhaji. Chapter 1167. Jinli was stunned when he heard the news. She went to see Mo. It was at night, when all the visiting people left, and the nurses who made rounds also left. Mo's room is next to the window, and she is already fine, because she has been hospitalized for the injury on her arm. She suffered this crime because of saving people, and she paid such a high price. Both netizens and the media were full of praise. Even the official media reported the incident and made an appointment for an interview, intending to portray Mo as a new representative of a generation of positive energy artists. Under such circumstances, no matter how painful the company's executives were, they had to put on a distressed and pity face, booked the best ward for Mo, invited the best care, and comforted her not to think too much, and everything will be arranged. It was quite noisy during the day, and Mo was tired of dealing with those who were sincere or false, and he was relieved only at this moment. At this time, she heard someone calling her name. Momo. Mo was startled and turned around. It's Jinli. She didn't know when she came, she just stood in the room. Mo thought of the other party's mysterious identity and ability, smiled, a little happy. Jinli, why are you here? Jinli was surprised, are you happy to see me? Mo nodded, of course. It sounds like it's true. Jinli looked at her and said affirmatively, you look pretty good. If a third person heard this, they might think Jinli was an idiot. I didn't see that she was injured, even hurt her throat, and her career was gone, so you said she was fine? But there are only Jinli and Mo here, both of them understand what happened before. Hearing this, Mo nodded, as if he had finally let go of some burden, with a relaxed look on his face. Yes, I'm fine now. Jinli nodded, that's good. She seemed to come to see her and say a word. Momo, goodbye then. Mo. Before she could say a word of convincing, Jinli disappeared. The way of disappearing is quite unscientific. Just like when she came. This was the last time Mo saw Jinli. Asterisk. Later, Jinli got a little news about Mo through the internet. For example, she was discharged from the hospital, had surgery on her arm, and wore short sleeves, but she couldn't tell the difference. For example, when she held a press conference, her attitude in the video was very calm and optimistic, saying that she could no longer sing and that she would leave the entertainment industry in the future. A few months later, the heat of this matter subsided, and a statement was released quietly, and Mo terminated the contract with the company. After that, she disappeared for a long time. People who quit the circle and lost their popularity will not pay much attention to their eyes. Mo's figure occasionally appears in the content of the marketing account, and not many people care. Asterisk. Staying in the world for a while was the tacit understanding between Jinli and Lu Zhenjie after they looked at each other the moment they knew they could go back. Going back this time, I'm afraid I won't come back for a long time. The time in Chaos God realm and this world is different. Even if they come back next time, they don't know if they will be able to see their friends. On the contrary, they stayed here for a few years or decades, and to the Chaos God realm, it was just the time for a spirit flower to bloom. The two of them, together with their mutual friends, live in flower country. Jinli still refused to act and stopped accepting long-running variety shows. He would occasionally accompany Lu Zhenjie to participate in some interviews or business receptions. Lu Zhenjie began to decentralize the power of the Lu family, picked a Lu family child who was pleasing to the eye, and occasionally took the time to give pointers, which was considered as preparation for the next generation of the Lu family. The Koi fairy wife is sweet as honey, love from the Koi goddess. Author, Su Xiao Zheji. Chapter 1168. In the third year, Su Hexiang told Jinli that she and Lu Qingyuan were together. Jinli sighed, you two have figured it out. Su Hexiang smiled, it's not that I can't figure it out, some things, if you don't clarify them, a little flaw may become a thorn in the heart in the future. Jinli said that I didn't understand. Okay, you just say yes. The relatives and friends who have a good relationship with both parties either know about it, or have already seen some signs of it. It is not surprising when they know about this matter. Instead, the media exploded. Fans were also shocked. After all, in the eyes of many people, it is absolutely impossible for these two people to be together. Unfortunately, the two made it public. The disclosure didn't stop. On the third day after announcing the relationship, Lu Qingyuan couldn't wait to announce the news of the marriage. It can be seen that this guy had planned it long ago. The two of them are not too young. Lu Qingyuan's side is okay. Lu Jianzhen has always been free to let his son be free, but the Su family's heart has been broken for a long time. Seeing that they finally settled down, they started to work on the wedding without saying a word. At the wedding, Jinli and Lu Zhenjie stood in the group of relatives and friends, watching the couples on the stage exchanging rings. It's fair to chase someone for 3 years. Jinli covered his mouth and laughed as he thought of something. Isn't it? Back then Susu chased Lu Qingyuan for 3 years, but to no avail. Later, it was Lu Qingyuan who chased him for 3 years. These two people, in terms of feelings, are quite fair. Lu Zhenjia looked at his wife who was leaning in his arms and giggled non-stop because of such a trivial matter, and said helplessly, "Is it that funny?" "Yes," Jinli said solemnly, "if you think about it this way, the two of us would be very boring. Look, you never said you liked me, so the two of us are together." Thinking about it this way, even Jinli felt a little strange. When he was with Lu Zhenjia, there really seemed to be no ceremony. It was so inexplicable, and they naturally identified each other, and they were together logically. Lu Zhenjia stroked her hair, and said seriously, "It's not boring, you have been with me for hundreds of thousands of years, and I have been with you for hundreds of thousands of years. Before we fell in love, the time and energy we spent pursuing each other, are countless times their size. Is that all right?" Jinli thought about it carefully, and there seemed to be nothing wrong. "Also, if you really want to hear," Lu Qingyuan whispered, "from now on, I can tell you every day." Jinli blinked. "Listen to what?" "Listen to me, Lu Zhenjia likes Jinli." Asterisk. Jinli and Lu Zhenjia had no children in the world. No matter how low-key they lived, the people who stared at them always stared at them. In the eyes of some people, it seemed that this was Jinli's great sin. There was someone at a reception who mysteriously thought that he knew a lot and went to Lu Zhenjia's side, saying that he could find a clean, young, and beautiful girl for Lu Zhenjia. "I promise you won't let Madame Lu know." Madame Lu was referring to Jinli. "Lu Zhenjia," he said coldly, "no need." The man thought he was Guji Jinli, and said with a smile, "It's okay if Mr. Lu is Mrs. Guji, we can just have a child, and I promise to send the child's mother far away, and I won't let her bother you in this life." To you and Madame Mrs. Lu is a savvy person at first glance. She didn't have a child herself, and raised this child from an early age. Isn't it no different from her own child? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Koi Fairy Wife is sweet as honey, love from the Koi Goddess. Author, Su Xiao Zheji. Chapter 1169. Lu Zhenjia's voice sank. "Say no." The man hurriedly said, "Hey, don't be angry, I just think, man, how can you not leave yourself a concubine? Roll." Lu Zhenjia couldn't bear it anymore and drank. The people nearby turned around in astonishment and looked at the two of them. Lu Zhenjia's face was sullen, and anyone could tell that he was in a bad mood. The man next to him was holding a wine glass with an embarrassed look on his face. Many people whispered and looked at each other, as if trying to figure out the scene in front of them. Lu Zhenjia looked coldly at the middle-aged man in front of him, and sneered, "Mr. Yang, from now on, the Zhaohong real estate of the Lu family and the Yang family will stop all business cooperation." After he finished speaking, he didn't want to take another look at this disgusting man, turned around and left. The middle-aged man's face was pale. There were more than one or two such disgusting things. Lu Zhenjia was disgusted himself, so he naturally didn't want Jinli to follow him to make nausea. Later, he simply left the company affairs behind, bought a small island and lived there by himself. Not only for this reason. In their 30s, Lu Zhenjia and Jinli were still young and beautiful, just like their age. This might be called good maintenance. At the age of 40, still youthful and beautiful, like in his early 20s, it is shocking enough in the crowd. This is what the two must experience. It's not that they don't have the best solution, a small spell to make their appearance age according to the laws of human beings, but Jinli can't bear that look of himself, even if it's a fake. And Lu Zhenjia, he didn't care what he looked like, but he cared a lot about how Jinli saw himself. Therefore, he was determined not to let Jinli see that he was not handsome. So the two bought the island, only told the address of a few close people, and lived a semi-reclusive life. The Su family, Su Hexiang, and his wife, Lu Jianzhen and the others, will come to visit them in a few days and get together. Long Hao and those from the Daoist Association will also come to sit down when they have time. Lu Qingyuan didn't know the identities of the two at first. But as time went by, people around him, including himself, felt the power of time. His body was no longer so strong, and when fine lines began to appear on his face, when the two of them were still young, he knew something was wrong. To his surprise, his wife and parents didn't look strange at all. Until he asked Lu Jianzhen. Lu Jianzhen is getting old, and she has lived in China more than before. A person, no matter how free her heart is, always yearns for her hometown when she is old. Hearing her son's words, she smiled. "Ah, didn't I tell you? Your uncle and your little aunt are not human beings." Lu Qingyuan. Is it really okay to tell me such a scary thing in such an ordinary tone? No matter how strange it was, Lu Qingyuan had to accept this reality in the end. Anyway, he couldn't deny this uncle because of this. Besides, we've been together for so many years, except that uncle and Jinli look a little strange now, nothing else is different from before. Asterisk. Later, time passed quickly. Su's father and Su's mother are old, and they inevitably come to the end of their lives. Then there is Lu Jianzhen. Lu Qingyuan and Su were also old. Their children were married and had a pair of lovely twins. They brought the beautiful children to the island to meet Jinli and the others once. The koi fairy wife is sweet as honey, love from the koi goddess. Author, Su Xiaozhezhi. Chapter 1170. It's about time, Jinli said to Lu Zhenjia. Lu Zhenjia also nodded. Their elders closed their eyes with happiness and contentment. Their friends have their own happy lives, and their children and grandchildren are around their knees. They can also leave here with peace of mind. Before leaving, Jinli and Lu Zhenjia went to Su Hexiang and Lu Qingyuan's house for the first time. Jinli, Mr. Lu, you, Su Hexiang, who was retiring to raise flowers and plants at home, was very surprised. Let's come and see you. Where's Qingyuan? Jinli asked. He's not at home, he went fishing, Su Hexiang said. I'll call him to come back. Jinli shook her head. No, it's fine. Su Hexiang said happily, would you like to eat at my place today? I'll send someone to buy vegetables. Still shaking her head, Jinli said again, no, I told you, we just came to see you. Su Hexiang was startled, and then understood what was going on. Her eyes turned red, she looked at Jinli and Lu Zhenjia. You. Jinli held Lu Zhenjia's hand and smiled at Su Hexiang. We've been here for a long time, and we're going home now. She almost cried when she saw Su Hexiang, feeling a little helpless. Holding Su Hexiang's hand, he took out a handkerchief and wiped her tears. Jinli teased her, I've become a grandmother, but I cry like a child. Fortunately, your two babies are not at home, otherwise I would lose face. Su Hexiang sniffed and said softly, if they see you, they will cry too. The pair of dragon and phoenix twins were only taken to the island once by Su Hexiang when they were 3 years old. Children at this age don't have a good memory, but probably the appearance of the two of them has left a deep memory on the two children. Until now, after many years, the two of them often ask Su Hexiang, Grandma, are those two gods the same, who are the beautiful older brothers and sisters? Su Hexiang's children had never met Jinli and the others. If they did, they would always be able to find them from the internet's memory, and when they heard what their children said, they only thought they were talking about children, not taking it seriously. Su Hexiang choked with sobs and laughed, if they knew you were leaving, they would probably cry too. Jinli finally reached out and hugged her. Susu, I'm leaving. Suhexiang hugged the person in her arms vigorously, then straightened up and looked at her with a smile. Well, goodbye. Goodbye. She knew, and so did Jinli, that this should be the last time they saw each other. Asterisk. After meeting Suhexiang, Jinli and Lu Zhenjia also went to meet another person. This is also her, the only person who went to see her before she left. Long Hao. For decades, apart from Jinli and Lu Zhenjia, the two immortal gods, there was one other person in Huiguo who hadn't changed. That is Long Hao. He is still the dragon team of the Supervision Bureau, still wearing a black windbreaker, with a cold complexion and a beautiful appearance. It's just that the frost and snow in his eyes became more lonely. He has always been a loner. You are leaving. He looked at Jinli and the two of them and said with certainty. Jinli nodded, yes, we're leaving. Long Hao had nothing else to say. See you by fate. Jinli hummed, see you by fate. When she turned her head to leave, she couldn't help turning her head again, looking at Long Hao. You should make some friends. Long Hao looked away from her, his eyes fell on her, the corner of his mouth seemed to be pulled a bit, outlining an arc that seemed to be a smile or a mockery. Really? He neither said yes nor denied. When Jinli turned around for the last time, he saw that he was still standing there, his back straight, like a sword drawn from its sheath. The late autumn wind blows off two yellowed leaves. Long Hao stood under the tree. This is the place where he was born. From childhood to adulthood, most of the most relaxed and happy days were spent here, under this tree. A kind old man hugged him and sat under his subordinates to cool off. The boy with curvy eyebrows handed him the carefully collected toys. It's a pity that the people who used to accompany him are no longer in this world. What's the point of making friends? A low sigh came from the wind. Always leave. I am left alone. After many years, Jinli and Lu Zhenjia came to this place again. Back then, the two of them personally opened the Ascension channel. The disciples sent by the Taoist sect to garrison have changed, but they recognize Jinli and Lu Zhenjia. Any place that can be sent to garrison such a place is the core of each sect, and in the future they will carry the rise and fall of sects. They were a little surprised when they saw the two of them. Senior Jinli, Senior Lu, who are you? Jinli smiled at them. We're leaving. The disciple who asked the question was taken aback for a moment, then hesitated and said, we haven't received a message from the master. Jinli waved her hand. Of course you can't get it, I didn't tell them at all. Disciple. Jinli smiled and said, if we tell them, they will definitely queue up to say goodbye to us one by one, and maybe even have a farewell party to show their solemnity. It's too troublesome, so let's not talk about it. Disciple. As strange as it sounds, it seems to be true. Jinli smiled and said to her, let's go first. Wait, Senior, that. Jinli said, don't worry, I left letters for those guys, but I will check them later. Disciple. When he remembered that he still had nothing to say, the figures of those two people had already entered the formation. The white light suddenly lit up, swallowing the figures of the two people, and they disappeared after a while. I actually want to ask, can I ask for a good luck charm? The disciple whispered. End of text. First of all, I would like to say sorry to everyone. I originally planned to write 1.5 million, but I didn't write it. I didn't write 150, because I cut off a relatively complete story of Lu Qingyuan and Susu, and the story of Yu Manluo and Fan Sheng that was originally planned to be written. In the end, I didn't write it because I thought it would be difficult to pull the supporting role line. I didn't have the ability to write vivid and interesting supporting roles that I didn't put a lot of effort into thinking about and perfecting. Cutting off these two will not have any effect on the integrity of the whole book, because what should be told, the story of the little fairy has already been told. As for the finale, it was planned a long time ago. Little Fairy and Papa Lu accompanied several important friends and relatives, Susu, Papa Su, Mama Su, Sister Zhen, etc., so that this human story will not leave any regrets. At the end, Jinli and Papa Lu left quietly. Everyone they needed to accompany and say goodbye had already accompanied and said goodbye, and the rest of them were real passers-by in their fairy lives. Later, there will be a few short episodes, a few supporting roles in the human world, and a little content about the heavenly realm. Then, we will go to the next book. Goodbye. The new book may be released in November or December. This spicy chicken author needs to take a break and take his driver's license test. Hope to see some familiar faces again. Good night. The Koi Fairy Wife is sweet as honey, love from the Koi Goddess. Author, Su Xiao Zheji. Chapter 1171. When he was very young, Long Hao knew that he was different from others. Other children can play many items in the playground, but he can only sit on the carousel. Even, he seldom goes to places like playgrounds. There are too many people, bacteria, and viruses, and he gets sick easily. Children of the same age in the compound don't like to play with him either. The little boys are full of energy and like to play superhero games. One chases, the other chases, and the faces of the running ones are flushed and sweaty. Long Hao couldn't play such a game. Some children even mocked him to his face, like a girl. In such an environment, if someone treats you well, it must be like an umbrella suddenly propped up over your head in a storm. No one can ignore it, and no one wants to let go. To him, Wen Jiming is the umbrella that protects him from wind and rain. Wen Jiming's life is completely different from Long Hao's. He is handsome and well-behaved, has a sweet mouth, and always loves to smile. There is no adult who doesn't like him. Children think he is good-looking and can play together, and they are willing to play with him. But he obviously has so many little friends, but he has his eyes on this pale and thin brother Ahao at the first sight. More than anyone else. He didn't know Long Hao's situation at first, and always wanted to take him out to play. Later, Grandpa Long told him that Ahao's brother was in poor health and could not do too strenuous exercise. At that time, Wen Jiming didn't quite understand what it meant to be in poor health, but he just felt that Long Hao was so pitiful, so he couldn't help but treat him better. Later, when they grew up, the two chatted about the past. Long Hao also asked Wen Jiming why he liked to play with him when he was young. Although cold and unlikable, Long Dui is very good at judging himself. He knows that he is not likable at all. Wen Jiming replied without thinking, "Because you are the prettiest." Long Hao. Facing his blank gaze, Wen Jiming smiled a little embarrassedly. "Really, there are not so many reasons. I like to play with you at that time, just because you are the best looking one in our compound. Children count boys and girls together." Long Hao. He thought about many reasons, but he didn't think about it. The truth is like this, childish. Wen Jiming is 2 years older than Long Hao, and they were not in the same class when they were in school. Wen Jiming is a little sunshine everywhere, and he is very popular in school. He often went to Long Hao's class to find him, had lunch together, and told the children in Long Hao's class, Ahao's younger brother was covered by a senior brother. Thanks to him, although Long Hao still doesn't like to talk very much and is thin, he was never isolated and bullied during school. The school near the compound has a 9-year system, and students can go all the way to the 9th grade. But Long Hao didn't study for such a long time. He has been in poor health since birth, and instead of getting better as he got older, he got worse. His mother left after giving birth to him, and his father felt a bit self-defeating after his wife left. He was away on missions all year round, and he also left when Long Hao was 6 years old. How sad. After all, from birth to 6 years old, he had only seen this father 2 or 3 times. Fanwai is updated from time to time. The Dragon Team deserves a separate sideshow. Recommend a new book. The Big Guy is Not Buddhist. Author, Shi Yanyan. Introduction, 1v1 Sushuang's pet article. As the evil spirit Jin Qi, who made the Qingyun world fearful, was struck to death by the sky lightning, everyone in the Qingyun world celebrated together. Jin Qi woke up again, and before she had time to scold the thief, she found that the time and space she was in had changed. There is no Qingyun realm, no cultivators, and no spells. And she seems to be a stinky contemporary female high school student who everyone shouts and beats? What the hell? Thinking about how she, the majestic Qingyun world's evil fairy, could be in such a miserable situation. Li Jingkai, a third-year student at Huansheng High School, with a cowardly character and a Buddha in everything. Arrogant max strength player Jin Qi, go to TM's Buddhist system, dare to do something in front of this fairy, a slap can't kill you. The teachers and elders nodded in relief. Student Jin Qi is not only good looking, but also polite to others, and her grades are also top-notch. She really is a model of a good boy. Other educated peers. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Koi Fairy Wife is sweet as honey, love from the Koi Goddess. Author, Su Xiao Zheji. Chapter 1172. Long Hao didn't feel much about his father's death, but Long Hao's grandfather, who was also his only remaining relative in the world, looked at his grandson with increasingly worried eyes. Long Hao's parents got married late and had children even later. Mr. Long was no longer young when he had Long Hao. This child is pitiful when Jiming's grandfather and Mr. Long were old friends. When the two children were in school, Mr. Long sighed to his old friend more than once, I am still here and can take care of him for a few years. If I what will he do now that he is alone? But Mr. Long never expected that Long Hao's body would not be able to hold on until the day when he failed. After he passed 10 years old, Long Hao's health became worse and worse. In the past, he was just physically weak and easily fell sick when the seasons changed, but he could still go to school and go out like a normal child. Later, I couldn't even go to school. For more than 10 years, Mr. Long took his grandson to search famous doctors all over China, and they came up with only one result: he was born in a frail body and needs to be taken care of carefully. It means there is no cure. When Long Hao was too weak to go to school, Mr. Long finally understood that this road would not work. The Long family is not an ordinary family, and Mr. Long is a famous figure. Of course he also knows some things that ordinary people don't know, and knows some people that ordinary people don't know. He began to take Long Hao out to visit some strange people he met through connections. Among them are people from the Taoist Association. Therefore, the relationship between Long Hao and the Taoist Association actually started very early. Another 3 years passed like this. Mr. Long finally gave up on curing Long Hao's body. It was different from the answers given by the doctors. Each of these capable people who claimed to have great abilities shook their heads after meeting Long Hao. He shook his head and sighed, this is his destiny. They can use rare materials to make elixirs that can treat some diseases that modern medicine can't deal with, but in Long Hao's case, they have no way. The more you are a member of Suanmen, the more taboo you are about changing your destiny against heaven. In the past few years, Wen Jiming only met Long Hao twice. Each time it came and went. Long Hao in Wen Jiming's eyes became paler and weaker every time. He was very scared. Teenagers have begun to be sensible and understand life and death. When saying goodbye that day, Wen Jiming hugged Long Hao and cried loudly. Where are you going? My grandfather didn't even tell me. How about I go with you? Long Hao quietly allowed this man to pick him up like a koala. Wen Jiming was measured. Although he hugged him so tightly, he remembered in his heart that this younger brother was weak and did not rely on the other person for strength. Even a childish person can be so considerate sometimes. He said softly, Brother Jiming, I'm going to see a doctor. You can't accompany me. Wen Jiming was pampered by his family and grew up. He is usually optimistic and generous, but when he is stubborn, he doesn't listen to anyone. He sniffed, "That's just right. It's inconvenient for Grandpa Long to be old and you're not in good health. If I go with you, can I still take care of you?" If these words were heard by the Wen family, they would be very angry. How dare this little ancestor say that he can take care of others? In fact, Wen Jiming was just afraid. He was afraid to see Long Hao's pale face, and he was afraid that he would never see brother Ah Hao again once he left. The Koi fairy wife is sweet as honey, love from the Koi goddess. Author, Su Xiao Zheji. Chapter 1173. After all, Wen Jiming still failed to leave with Long Hao and the others. He was dragged back by his parents who were notified by Mr. Long. Before leaving, he was still waving to Long Hao, saying that when Long Hao came back, he would go to his house to play, where he had half a house full of toys. Long Hao didn't respond, just looked at him quietly. "Can't you bear it, Xiao Hao?" Mr. Long looked at his grandson. Long Hao nodded, then shook his head. "He has many friends. So, even if he didn't come back, he wouldn't be sad." At this time, Long Hao didn't know what kind of decision the old man in front of him had made in his heart as he looked at him. Asterisk. This year is one that Long Hao will never forget. And Wen Jiming also waited for his younger brother Ah Hao. Long Hao came back, bringing with him Mr. Long's ashes. He was very silent and quietly took the ashes of his only relative in the world home. Many people came to the Long family. Wen Jiming had never seen so many people come to the Long family. They held a grand funeral for Mr. Long. The two families have a close relationship, and Wen Jiming also attended the funeral. He stood in the crowd and looked at the young man standing at the front of the crowd. He was wearing solemn black clothes and his snow-white jaw was clenched into a cold arc. During that time, I heard that the Long family was in chaos, with many people coming and going. Wen Jiming heard from adults that many people offered to raise Long Hao until he reached adulthood, but all of them were rejected. He lives alone in the compound. Seeing that Long Hao still refused to let go, those people stopped coming. Quietness returned to the courtyard again. Long Hao didn't go to school and stayed at home all day. Wen Jiming would visit him after school every day. Wen's mother pulled him a few times. She seemed to be a little taboo about Long Hao, but if Wen Jiming could be obedient, he wouldn't be called Wen Jiming. She couldn't control her son, and Long Hao next door was really pitiful, so Wen's mother simply didn't care. Long Hao refused visits from those with ulterior motives, but when Wen Jiming went to see him, he showed no resistance, although it was difficult to see any joy on his face. During that half year, Wen Jiming spent almost all his attention on Long Hao. For no other reason than Long Hao seemed to be in a very bad situation. Just a month after Mr. Long's funeral, there was almost no blood on his face. He was snow-white, thin and haggard. Every time Wen Jiming looked at him in fear, he always felt that if the wind was stronger outside, this brother Ah Hao would be blown away. At first, there was an aunt in the Long family who took care of Long Hao's food, clothing, housing, and transportation. However, the aunt probably thought Long Hao was too scary, so she left in fear after only working for a month. Wen Jiming began to squeeze his mother and asked if he could let Long Hao come to his house for dinner. His mother sighed and looked at her silly son. "You are kind-hearted. First ask if Long Hao is willing to come. Right?" He only thought about getting rid of his mother, but he didn't even ask brother Ah Hao for his opinion. Wen Jiming ran to ask Long Hao again, but the other party shook his head. "No." "Why?" Wen Jiming was anxious. "Then if you stay at home, who will cook for you?" Long Hao looked at his anxious look and seemed to find it interesting. He smiled slightly and said, "Don't worry, I can do it by myself, I can't die." The last sentence was spoken so softly that Wen Jiming didn't hear it clearly. Naturally, I didn't hear the pain and helplessness in those words.